Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's begin our introduction of commissioners and staff.
Oh, that's me. It's always me. Tom Dunlop, city member.
Jim DeMartini, county member.
Terry Withrow, county member.
Amy Bublak, city member.
Sarah Littlepenny, executive officer.
Javier Camarena, assistant executive officer.
Rob Tiro, LAFCO counsel.
Jennifer Goss, commission clerk.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Move on to public comment period. Anyone wishing to come up and speak to something that is not on the agenda? And that's a no. So we'll close public comment and move to approval of minutes. We have a motion or any changes to the minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimous, 4-0. Correspondence?
There's no specific correspondence, and the informational correspondence is what's noted on your agenda.
Thank you. Declaration of conflicts and disqualifications, looking to my left and noting none. We'll proceed to public hearing.
So the first public hearing tonight is the policies and procedures update. Staff regularly updates policies and procedures in response to changes in state law. Your LAFCO is also required to have a policies and procedures document via the government code. So in reviewing the proposed policies and procedures, we identified some sections particularly in Section 4 and one change in Section 7 that are proposed tonight. Just to give you a quick overview, the first change was in regards to the plan for services requirement. A plan for services is a document that's required for every annexation. It discusses how the city or district is going to provide services to the area. This was just a simple clarification that went through state law that clarified if a city or district is already serving an area that they can easily meet this requirement by just stating that. There had been a kind of a horrible misinterpretation of that code in its older form. Basically said a city couldn't annex if it couldn't fulfill the plan for services, if there were no services to the area. The second proposed change is with regards to the description of a sphere of influence. We had noted that there was an erroneous statement in that section that stated that LAFCO adopts spheres for unincorporated communities and agriculture areas, kind of a reverse concept to what you may be used to, and that's because government code actually doesn't allow for that. Government code requires you to adopt a sphere for a city or a special district, but not for these other areas. So we made a clarification to that section as well in order to avoid any confusion that LAFCO is adopting spheres for the whole county. The other update that we have here proposed is removal of Policy 11. Policy 11 describes an environmental appeal process that is actually outside of the CEQA process and outside of what LAFCO already has in state law for what's called a reconsideration process. So this was actually a section that was kind of horribly out of date. It didn't align with current law, and it doesn't align with CEQA. So we propose going ahead and removing that and retaining the other sections that we have that discuss the existing processes for reconsideration and appeal. There was also a minor change in the policies, a definition of contiguous, just clarifying that term. You'll also see a new policy, Policy 15A, which is meant to meet a new requirement resulting from Senate Bill 239. And Senate Bill 239 requires the Commission to review certain fire protection contracts. This was not something that Cal LAFCO introduced as a bill. It actually came from labor unions and other interests outside of LAFCO. But what they wanted was LAFCO to be able to review any contracts between fire agencies that would change service area or employment for more than 25% of an agency. So what we've done is we put a simple policy in there that kind of reiterates state law and says we'll follow what's in state law, but also clarifies a couple of important exemptions. One, we want to make sure that mutual aid is identified as not being impacted by this. That's not what the state law was intended for. And also there's an exemption in there for existing contracts and renewals of existing contracts that aren't going to trigger that threshold. So we know we have a lot of agencies with existing fire protection contracts. If those are renewed, they shouldn't trigger this new requirement. So with that, staff has recommendations for you outlined in the report. They include finding the proposal to be consistent with state law and the overall goals of LAFCO, finding that the proposal is not a project pursuant to CEQA, and approving the update and adopting Resolution 2018-02. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions of staff?
I know there's people here who have a question about 15A. I'm not sure I understand it myself, to be honest. This triggers when more than 25% of affected area is in the jurisdictional boundaries. Can you give us some example of what would trigger this into place?
So it's similar to what the commission already reviews for out-of-boundary service agreements. We're more familiar with processing requests for water service outside a city boundary, some kind of service extension outside the jurisdictional boundary of an agency. And so this would be similar to that in that you have a fire district boundary, and that fire district is proposing to provide service to potentially another district or to an area that's not even in a district outside its current boundary. And that's more than 25% of its existing boundary, so it's a huge jump in service area. They would have to come to LAFCO for review or approval.
But don't they have to come to LAFCO already if they annex additional area? I remember, for instance, Ceres wanted to annex some land and took some away from Westport, and they had to come.
Yeah, if it's a formal annexation, it would just be processed along with, whatever city annexation or whatever's triggering it, if it's a district annexation. This would be a contract. So normally, before this law came into place, if two agencies were to contract with each other, they'd be exempt from any LAFCO review. And that's actually still the case for, say, a city and a district contracting for sharing water or any other service. But they've picked out fire now as something that should come to LAFCO for review. And I want to point out again, too, that Cal LAFCO was not necessarily in support of this along the way. And our LAFCO, too, was kind of taken aback by this because it's something that prior to this law was exempt from LAFCO review completely. And we kind of encouraged entities, even through past annexations, you would see us encouraging entities to contract with each other to work out services or future service areas, things like that.
Any further questions?
So the Oakdale Fire Protection District, Stanislaus Consolidated, would fall under this because we tripled their, well, not quite tripled their size of the district.
If it was new.
Service area. If it was new, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
if it
already
was
in
new.
place.
Right.
But if it was new, it would have to go through the LAFCO process.
Right.
And the reason for this, I mean, I talked about labor unions and.
Yeah, I think there was some interest there where people probably felt like they didn't have a voice in the actual decision to contract. They wanted another, usually LAFCO is considered the other neutral third party, to hear both sides and to review the finances of each side to see if it actually works out.
Yeah.
So it seemed like that's what they were looking for, was a kind of a neutral entity to.
So it kind of takes it out of the hands of the board of directors of the two agencies that are trying to work out a deal and a contract, and now all of a sudden they're going to have to come here.
Yeah. What will probably happen is they'll fulfill the requirements of the state law in applying to LAFCO, and we will review it consistent with all the other LAFCO policies, which generally encourage contracts and agreements and things as long as it works for both entities and it's not harming the public.
And the fact that they're coming before us, it will have worked out. It's an agreement. There's not going to be a problem
Right.
except for, maybe with a labor union or something, it could be a problem.
Right, and it'll already have gone to their boards prior to even coming to us.
Right.
It just makes it harder, I think. I think that's my concern, is it's hard enough to bring public entities together because there's always personalities and
Right.
who's running the show
Yeah.
and so forth. This is just another level that's going to be difficult to save taxpayers' money.
Yeah, and I could see a situation where we've got two boards that have agreed, they're all set to go, and then, but maybe there's somebody out there that doesn't want this to happen, potentially a labor organization, and they could come in here and try to stop what two boards have, and encourage us to stop it, and just put us in the middle to have to,
But it is state law, right? We have no
Right.
choice.
So our policy doesn't add anything additional to it. It doesn't add any additional requirements. It really just acknowledges that this is the state law that we're going to follow, that we've identified that things that are existing are already exempt, so there's no messy questions later. And that's as simple as we can make it for our side.
All right, any further questions from you?
Just the way I understand it, then, we may be required to hear this, but we could vote however we feel, whether that we want the annexation or
Right.
not. Contract.
Okay, I'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak, please come up to the lectern and state your name for the record.
Evening. Melissa D'Souza with Denair Fire. I have a clarification question on your policy 15. We are under the sphere of influence of Turlock City, and so our question with that policy change and in regards to the 25% is we normally will have a meeting with them and they will say, at this time we don't have enough building permits, et cetera, that we're going to annex any more of your existing property, but at any time they can tell us that, yes, we're going to annex this amount. So in that policy 15 or the 25%, can they take anything from us without giving us the due process?
No, and actually the example this actually assumes that two entities are in agreement. This would assume that like Turlock and Denair came up with an agreement and you're going to share resources, or maybe Denair is suddenly going to become a paper district and going to assume all the duties under Turlock, something like that, without any formal boundary change. Boundary changes that you're talking about would actually come before us as a formal annexation.
Okay.
So then you would have the process of, well, actually even writing letters beforehand, but also coming to a public hearing like this and identifying concerns at that point too.
Okay.
That'd be heard as part of the annexation process.
We just weren't sure where that 25% came from, if they could just take it without notice, or so we wanted to be clear on that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for speaking. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commissioners. What's the will of the group?
I'll move to accept the staff recommendations for this item.
We have a motion?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Passes unanimous, 4-0. Thank you for coming. Moving on to other business, mid-year budget report for fiscal year 2017-2018.
So this is an informational report for the commission. Staff is not requesting any budget adjustments at this time, but we are giving you this as an update. So mid-year budget, right now our expenditures, we're running at 36% of what we had budgeted. And then revenues are actually slightly higher than what we budgeted due to application fees that we've received. So application fees right now are running, actually as of today, probably closer to $8,000 above the original estimate. And since we're only at the halfway point, we actually expect that will increase by fiscal year end. All the categories that we've been monitoring are projected to be within their budgeted amounts, and reserves, which we have not tapped into yet, will be reviewed again during preparation of next year's budget, particularly if we come in over on our revenues. The staff recommendation for this is just to accept the budget report, and as I said before, no adjustments are recommended at this time.
Okay, so but you said there was no action required, so we're just listening to this, or do you actually want a
You
motion?
accept it. You can do a motion to accept it if you want.
Would you like that?
Sure.
All right, let's do that. Any questions, staff? Open to the public. Anybody wishing to speak about the budget? Close that. Bring it back to the commissioners.
I will make a motion to accept this report.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Onward, annual election of officers.
This is a highly important item as it comes once a year. We get to change the chair and vice chair. Jennifer's outlined for you in the report who would be eligible to be a chairperson, which we're looking for a county member, and then a vice chairperson as a city member. So you can take those in one vote if you like.
Yeah, I've never got any campaign flyers about this
Yeah,
election.
I didn't either.
A chance.
Looks like that we need a motion for a county supervisor to be a.
Well, the most qualified person here is Terry Withrow.
I totally
We'll
agree.
hardly support him. I just think he's going to do a wonderful little job. We're going to have a lot better snacks up here.
Ooh, no more recess. So that was a motion, nomination?
That was a motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of having Commissioner and then soon-to-be Chair Withrow, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Oh, it passes unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, now there's one county member who can, or city member who can do this. Not me. So I can't because I'm terming out. So that would make Tom, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm terming out on this.
Oh, yeah, I see.
No. Yeah, so it's specific term limits for this position in LAFCO, so.
Is there?
Yeah,
That's in writing somewhere?
I guess so.
There's a rotation, so.
Maybe I was forced out. No. So I would nominate you, Tom, to take the vice chair. We have a second?
I will second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. There we have it, chair and vice chairs.
So better snacks for next year.
Yay. Commissioner comments, anybody? Acceptance speech? Nothing? Additional matters at the discretion of the chairperson? I have nothing. Executive report.
The staff is recommending cancellation of the February 28th meeting. As I had mentioned at the last meeting, we're working on the Oakdale Rural Fire application, and we're aiming for the March 28th meeting for that. As a reminder, Jennifer had sent you out your Form 700s to turn that in as soon as possible. And then I also wanted to note that yesterday the Board of Supervisors adopted its annual committee assignments, and we'll be having Supervisor Chiesa as an alternate county member at our next meeting.
Outstanding. Okay, I need somebody to make a motion for adjournment.
Motion adjourned.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting's in. Thank you so much.